on. So let me turn off my notifications. Give me 1 second, because my Slack just like goes crazy. um, hi, I'm Chandel. I'm the CEO of Degrees of Freedom, which is now Junior Scholars. We're a hybrid higher education program focused on supporting students from low-income communities to gain access to well-paid careers with $0 in student debt. I think I was supposed to say something about my alma mater and stuff. I went to A&T undergrad, and I went to a Harvard Graduate School of Education for my master's.
Well, thank you so much, Chandel. I wanted to get started just by running through some kind of generic questions about, the decisions you made. So I guess the primary question, the first question would be, why did you end up going to college?
Funny enough, I went to college mostly because I was trying to get out of my parents' house. Like it was I was just like always trying to be independent. And then I was like, oh, I'm smart enough to get into college. And when you go to college, you can get like your own dorm room, say less, So, I mean, it's crazy because like initially when I was in high school, I was really interested in becoming an educator, just based on like what I was experiencing as a student. And then like that also kind of like rolled into it and, pushed me to wanna go to school.
Did you have to take out student loans to go to school?
So actually in my first year, I had gotten this scholarship, like North Carolina Teaching Fellows. And so it was supposed to like offer a full ride to like state schools, well, most state schools, and then like almost a full ride to private schools. But given that my parents weren't really familiar with like how to read financial aid packages and stuff, we were like sort of confused about the fact that I was gonna still have to pay $10,000 out of pocket. Yeah. And then like didn't find out until it was, close to time to go to school. So we just like ended up kind of figuring it out. But I definitely had to take out loans to go to graduate school. And some of my loans from that teaching fellow scholarship ended up being converted into loans because I didn't teach in North Carolina thereafter.
Was that a difficult decision to make, to come out of like undergraduate not having, what did you feel accomplished coming out of undergraduate not having any student debt specifically?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think I ended up still maybe with coming out of undergrad with like 10 grand because of that first year at Queens, which was just really annoying. Because if I would have known that, I just would have went to A&T from the beginning. And I wouldn't have had any loans. But I mean, it was fine. But at the same time, like I also knew that I was still gonna have loans because I was choosing not to teach in North Carolina anymore. Which, like, I will be transparently, they were very transparent about like the sort of like terms of going forward with a scholarship, the teaching fellow scholarship, that you had to teach for 4 years or you wouldn't, or you would have to pay it back. But I also think that like when you're 17, you have no idea where you want to be when you're 22. Like, and like if I would have done that over again, like that just wasn't smart. Yeah. And so I ended up with loan debt because I don't think I was mature enough to make that decision.
So if you had the chance to do it over again, you don't think you would not teach in North Carolina?
I would still teach, but I don't think I would teach in North Carolina, even if I had to do it over again. When I came out of college, North Carolina had been on a pay freeze for teachers for like the past 3 years. Teachers are making like coming out with their bachelor's like in the 30s. And I got offered like a position teaching in New York, making 50 something, with an opportunity to make like 65 by year 3. Like that was a no-brainer. But like you're making decisions of like that when you're 17 and like don't have a full understanding of like the job landscape and like all of those things. So I don't think that was like appropriate for me to do.
Yeah. So, and this is a deeper question, just, and it's something I've always wanted to ask you. I think when I know you knew you wanted to teach early on, but when did you know that you wanted to like specifically bring a different type of um like specifically bring a change to teaching or
Yeah.
change to students?
So my freshman year of high school, I was in New York and I was going to Beacon High School, which is like one of the top public high schools in the city. You have to like test into it. You sort of apply to high school like you apply to college in New York. And so I went to a really, really good school, and the rest of my family members didn't. But like when you're like 13, you're not like trading stories about teacher quality. I didn't know that they didn't go to good schools. But then when I moved to North Carolina, I had to go to a neighborhood school or essentially go to a school that matches my parents' income. Whereas, when I was in New York, I was traveling like an hour by train every morning to go to school in Lower Manhattan. And so I had already seen the light. I was going to like a really, really good school when at Beacon. And then when I transferred, I was like, what is this hot mess? Like, what is going on here? It was just literally terrible. Like the quality of education. Don't get me wrong, I had some a couple of good teachers, but like also like I was in AP classes and stuff like that versus the rest of the students who were in the regular classes. And just to kind of see some of the interactions that teachers would have with especially male students of color, like a lot of racist practices that were happening in the school in terms of like tracking certain groups of students into vocational tracks, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you shouldn't be like putting students in a position to where by the time they're a senior, if they want to go to college, they don't even have the courses that they need to even apply, right?
Yeah.
So like limiting opportunities for students really early on. And that's what made me want to be an educator, because I was just like, this is straight crazy. And I actually even I just remember being like, I'm in the South in like a rural-ish type of town, like, Confederate flags are plentiful, coming from the Bronx. And like, we basically just like, me and Talia, who we like started so much trouble at that school because we were like petitioning for them to get rid of the Confederate flags. We were like, we started this like African American culture club where we were like rocking like vests with fist on the back, and we were like meeting every Wednesday and like talking about the movement and all this. And I just remember being so taken aback when we had our first class, like our first meeting, and we did like a Black History Month like pop quiz, like who was the first Black person to run for president, or like, who, like some like super simple questions, and like people couldn't answer them. And I was like, I need to be a teacher. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, contributed.
I didn't know about this radical side of you. So you and Talia were out here changing the game.
Yes, we were.
That's crazy. So I guess I don't want to skip too far ahead, but what was the transition between like, okay, I want to teach so students of color don't have those same type of experiences, and then like I want to start Dania Scholars, or I want to start my own specific school?
Yeah, so I think initially what drew me to my first teaching assignment was the principal. So I ended up teaching in Harlem my first year, and like the school was just like so focused on civics, so focused on getting students engaged, and like doing a lot of the stuff that like I was trying to do as like a high school student, but that was like already kind of baked into the curriculum. And so then I was sort of like, like when I left New York, charter schools weren't even really a thing, like when I was growing up. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like people are out here trying to like address these same issues that I was seeing at the school, at my high school when I moved down south. And then I ended up leaving there and going to become a school leader at another network. And I just started seeing like a lot of practices that I found to be really, really problematic. And then also when looking at the landscape of like, where else can I go? Was really underwhelmed by the options. And in New York in particular, the like charter school sector in itself is like pretty much ran by white leaders, white founders. Like they are like the trailblazers of that movement in New York City. And that presents a lot of barriers, I think, to them being able to adequately serve students of color. And so I actually quit and decided I wanted to start my own school, Dunia Collegiate in Atlanta. And, you know, teaching Swahili as a foreign language, like focused on like global awareness and relevance and STEM for students, and really connecting student identity to scholarship, right? Because, you know, you students of color that like math ain't for Black kids, while like Black people invented mathematics. Like we're off. Like there's just a lot of information that needs to be like properly transferred over to students of color so that they can understand like, you know, who they come, where they come from, and like really walk in their like ancestral power, right? So I think like from there, just thinking through like going through that process of trying to open Dunia, and which was sort of like hampered by the pandemic and like some other things. I then started to like think about like, well, how can we essentially like address this like this issue in terms of like connecting education to like students having economic freedom. Mm-hmm. And I think that like from in the K-12 space, there's a lot of time spent like fixing students to make them strong college students, as though like the idea of going to college is like the be all end all, when we know that, or people should know that, Black and Latinx adults earn less on average than their non-degree holding white counterparts. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of like information that's not, I guess it's sort of misleading in terms of like the way that we push students towards college, because it's supposed to like help them transcend poverty. And so when looking at degrees of freedom or Dunia scholars and like our approach to this program, it's really about like, how do we focus on the root issue that we're actually trying to solve, which is like disrupting generational poverty for low income students of color. And when you do the backwards mapping, not all of the roads lead back to a 4-year college degree. And that's not, because I'm very sensitive about this, that's not me trying to lower the standard for what Black children can accomplish, because if they want to go to college and they want to get the 4-year degree, they can do that. But the sort of nuance that needs to be struck is that it's not absolutely necessary. And it is actually more beneficial from an opportunity cost perspective for students to spend less time, if they can, getting whatever, less time and less money, getting whatever training that they need in order to be able to get a middle class job, period. Yeah. And that's the premise of what we're building.
I think that's a good point. I always say to people when we have those conversations about education and healthcare, like kind of binarily, like there's good and then there's bad. It's like, that's just not how equality works, right? Like that's not how all of these things kind of plug into that. I have to ask the $1 million question, I guess. How does how did your experience with student loans factor into how you taught and the need scholars and because I know such a big piece of it is the fact that these students can start to receive this kind of education without putting themselves in debt. Was that
Right.
like, did that have anything to do with your personal story and your personal experience with loans? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Transparently, like because my teaching scholarship was converted into a loan, and I took out $40,000 to go to Harvard for 1 year. I was paying like $800 a month in student loans. Now it's down to 400, and right now zero because till September we're just gonna hope that they kick that can down the road.
Yeah.
Um, but like, do you know like I could be buying a house. I could be like doing
Yeah.
so many things with $800 a month. And it's just like going out like ties. And like,
Yeah.
that just doesn't make any sense. We should not be, I think, students of color who are burdened by student loans, especially ones who don't even get the degree, right? Because then they're really in trouble, right? You spend 2 years, you go to some non-selective private school where they were just trying to boost their student of color numbers and have zero support for you when you get there. So you make it through freshman year and get spit out with $20,000 worth of debt. Like, you are in an even more precarious position because you're still working at Foot Locker. Like, that's not, that's just not, it shouldn't be that much risk associated with you trying to better yourself. I mean, and quite frankly, I don't even think like Black people should be paying for college, but that's a whole nother conversation. Um, so I don't know, that definitely factored into it. And I really thought, to me, like when we were designing this project, like I was thinking about like my family members who have student loan debt, who made an attempt at college and like were unsuccessful, and still have that burden. Obviously I'm aiming for our students to graduate, but when I think about the target population that we're trying to serve, students who do struggle, I want it to at least be a space where like they can struggle and try again, and they can like get the support they need and not feel like they're going to, mortgage off the rest of their future in the process.
No, that makes perfect sense. You mentioned buying a house, and it made me think. And this might be personal. You can let me know if it is. Are there any like specific like life changes that like at one point you thought you might make, and then like I had to realize that like actually I got to pay $800 a month, so I'm not gonna be able to do it.
I mean, so many things. It's, I mean, literally, once they started forgiving student loan debt during the pandemic, I had literally saved up enough money to put like 30 to 40% down on a house. Like, it's jaw dropping how significant that money. I mean, also we were in the house, so I wasn't spending my money, at the bar or anything too. So that also contributed. Those
Yeah.
things collectively led to an amazing financial situation, and it just like bulb, like this, we're losing opportunity to build wealth because we are investing an unreasonable amount of money, amount of our income into paying off student loans, because the the cost of college is way too expensive.
I just thought about. I know when I was in college and we were taking out student loans, there used to be a conversation about student loan forgiveness for teachers.
Mm-hmm.
How is there a way that?
Don't get me started on that sham. I'm sorry. Please don't let me get started on that sham. I know too many teachers who have
Uh-huh.
not been able to get, or people who are in public service who are not able to get the public service loan forgiveness. There's plenty of documented stuff out there about these loan service providers who the federal government has passed these loans off to, who are doing incredibly predatory stuff to keep people from being able to gain access to the public service loan forgiveness. I am one of those people. They like are not going to forgive my loans after 10 years because they said I'm not on the correct such and so whatever thing, which is a total lie, and I have documentation of it. And they like
Mhm.
and then I know so many people who that's the case for. So even that, like the public service loan forgiveness piece is not straightforward at all. And there's a lot of folks who are not even able to take advantage of it because there's some loophole that the provider finds that they can't get access to it.
That's crazy. I did not know that at all. I think I like I said, I distinctly remember so many conversations we had about public service and how it was like the correct thing to do or a good way to go because your loans would be forgiven um, after you did it. That's kind of crazy.
I mean, there's definitely people who get it, but I know there's I've seen a couple of articles about like people trying to file lawsuits against the service providers because they're like doing really shady stuff.
That's crazy. I didn't know this. Well, that's great information for what we're doing here. I had no idea. And so I think so. We talked about the purpose of the campaign is to forgive $50,000 worth of student loan debt for every borrower, and the impact that that could have on Black women specifically, who are the most likely to default on student loan debt, right? And who are um, statistically, they take out more student loan debt than any other type of student, right? How would $50,000 worth of student loan debt forgiveness affect your life? What kind of position would that put you in?
I think it would put me in the position that I'm in now, where I feel like I can invest in like buying a home or invest in a business, invest in stocks. I mean, I've been investing a lot of money in stocks since I haven't been having to pay student loans since everything's been like put on hold. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we can do. And, the thing that's most jaw dropping about student loan defaulting is that most folks who do default on their loans are Pell Grant recipients. So they are low income. I want to say the number is somewhere around 90% of folks that are defaulting on their loans have loan debt, and it's less, and it's short money. It's like around $10,000 or something like that. Like, and so that says everything, right? Low income people are striving to like reach this quote unquote American dream by attending college, and are getting put in a precarious financial position trying to achieve the thing that everybody says that they need to do.
Yeah, I think when researching this, that's what stood out to me, I think, the most. Like, we all know the dichotomy of generational wealth between Black and white folks, but the way in which like student loan debt specifically was broken down as a reason that Black folks can't move forward because you have no money, and so you go into debt to make yourself more money. It logically it doesn't make sense, but there's so many things kind of attached to an overall narrative that makes it make sense.
So to me, like I can fully appreciate the concept of like it takes money to make money, or like you need to invest in yourself, or I can totally understand that concept, but I just don't think that education should be like one of those things. I don't think education should be one of those things. Healthcare shouldn't be one of those things. Like there is more than enough wealth in this country, and it is for the benefit of this entire country, for like the strength of our economy, for like countless reasons, right? The health of our population generally, to have an educated population, for folks to be able to be re-educated and retrained in the fields that are fastest growing. It is in the best interest of this country to do that. And so the fact that burden is being placed as though it's individual responsibility is, it's just, I think it's irresponsible. Especially when, like, because of systematic oppression or what have you, it's contributing to the fact that you can't afford to invest in yourself in the first place.
No, that makes sense. And this is a question I just thought of, but I think it I think it's a good one. If you we look at Dunia Scholars in the place that you want to be at its peak. What does that look like? What does this program look like for students of color seeking to educate themselves or seeking to move into the workforce without being put in a hole?
To me, success would look like students who came in Pell eligible to have kids that are no longer Pell eligible. That to me would be like a indication that we have disrupted generational poverty. For students who graduate to be able to earn a middle class wage, is like, that to me is what success looks like. How we're going directly to that sort of like inflection point and saying like, how do we get you on the path to the career that's going to set you up for success? And we're looking at, fields that have more guaranteed or just like high projected job growth, like technology, like web development, data analytics, education, fields of that nature that students would be able to, or tech sales, that's like a really fast growing field as well. Fields that students will be able to come out and be able to hit the ground running, because that's like what the whole point is of you going to get training in the first place.
Yeah.
I think another problem with, this is sort of speaks to college advising more so than the higher education space itself. But like, I think that like, there also has to be like this real conversation with students about where they're choosing to go to college, that would be comparable to how people would have a conversation with someone about like taking out a $60,000 loan to like go buy a Porsche. They would be like, don't do that because you're poor. And that's a lot of risk, right? Like you taking out a $60,000 loan to go get an art degree. Like, I love art, but like you can't afford that level. Like there are high risk fields and there are lower risk fields. And I think to like counsel low income students into high risk fields with adjoining debt is extremely irresponsible. I know everybody likes to be like, oh, but what are you passionate about? But like, yeah, I'm passionate about a Maserati, but it's just not in my price range. Like, and we need to like have, legitimate conversations with students about what they're doing with their time and with their money, because they don't see it now because they're not paying it immediately, but we're doing them a disservice when they graduate and they can't get a job and they have so much debt because somebody was trying to like hit their, college acceptance numbers. I think it's really, really irresponsible.
That was actually my next question, because the last town hall that I did, one of the things that we spoke about is how student loans are specifically seen as an opportunity as opposed to a burden for low income folks, right? Like I have the opportunity to go to an expensive school because I had good grades and were accepted, as opposed to that opportunity later in life comes with, $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month payments. At this point in your life, nobody would let you take on, right? Like at 18, you can't go to buy a Porsche and be like, I'm gonna pay $800 payment. And so that's just an intriguing, not intrigue. I say those words all the time, intriguing history, but it's kind of crazy to think about.
Right. And my thing is that if you are a student who struggled academically in high school, who, in there, or maybe you didn't struggle terribly, but just you didn't excel to the level at which it allowed you to be able to get scholarship opportunities to go to college, then no one's saying you shouldn't go. But when you do go, you should be pursuing something that's going to allow you, that's going to allow you to get a job thereafter, and not just like this thing that's like a totally emotional decision, because that's just not how finances work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not. I don't know.
Are there like direct I know you spoke about the things that you want Dunia scholars to focus on as like career paths, but are there like direct career paths that you tend to talk to students about in spaces when you are with them now before you guys are off the ground and running?
Yeah, so in terms of career paths, I mean, health is one that we definitely want to add, but like are having some challenges in terms of like certifications and stuff like that to be able to offer it. But health, tech, education, and also there's a track that's like supporting students to gain admission to four-year institutions, but with a strong financial aid package. So I don't think that like let's just all throw four-year schools in the trash, but like if you're gonna go, like let's try to put you in the best financial position you can be. You already spent 2 years with accruing no debt. If we can get you a decent scholarship in the last 2 years, then and going and pursuing a high growth field, then you're going to be in a better position as an adult or as a graduate, to enter the middle class.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's all the questions I got. I just knew that talking to you would be fantastic. I wanted to check and see. I know Kiara's here with us if she had any questions.
Hey, no, just listening in. Don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, Chandel, I appreciate you once again. This is you're one of my favorite people in the world. You know that, but I think what you do is incredible, and like the time, energy, and effort that you put into making sure that Black folks have an opportunity to move forward in spaces where folks kind of pretend like those opportunities already exist, is phenomenal and so necessary. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for the work that you do. And I really, really, really appreciate the conversation. You want to end on anything?
No. Thank you for having me. It's a really interesting conversation. I don't think I've had like a conversation that was like hyper specific on student loan debt, and it's a really important conversation to be having because it just has so many implications for so many aspects of people's lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I will talk to you soon.
All right.
And I appreciate you so much.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.